If you spend any time in the comments sections of the internet, you've likely come across some version of this image. A man doomed to push a rock up a hill forever, often paired with a single, highly counterintuitive phrase: "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." Look at the raw torture etched into this weathered stone face. This represents King Sisyphus, a man condemned by the Greek gods to an eternity of rolling a rock up a steep hill, only to watch it tumble back down to the bottom the exact moment he reaches the top. This is a portrait of the writer and philosopher Albert Camus. He is the man responsible for attaching that idea of happiness to a myth about eternal torture. The reason this ancient Greek punishment strikes such a nerve today is that we are all intimately familiar with pushing boulders. Paying the bills, cleaning the house, answering emails, hitting the same career benchmarks, our modern routines have a looping, inescapable futility to them. Demanding that people simply be happy about their repetitive modern struggles has the ring of a toxic, exhausting delusion. As this diagram illustrates, Camus defined a concept known as absurdism. It occurs when humanity's desperate, innate desire for rational meaning violently collides with a universe that is cold, chaotic, and silent. Looking at this photograph of a solitary cross standing against the ruins of war-torn buildings, you can see exactly why this philosophy took hold. Camus wrote his essays after the Second World War, right as traditional religious and societal structures were collapsing around him. Facing this void, Camus argued that we cannot rely on grand illusions or an afterlife to save us. Instead, we have to revolt against the meaninglessness of our condition with a kind of defiant joy. But there is a glaring mechanical flaw in that logic when applied to a modern mind. Sisyphus is highly intelligent. He knows exactly how pointless his task is. Striving for happiness while being fully aware of a wretched, futile reality is a psychological paradox. Camus' specific use of the word happy paints us into a corner. To actually survive the looping repetition of daily life, we need a psychological tool grounded in something more durable than forced contentment. The word happy creates a trap. If you hate doing the dishes and you try to force your brain into finding pleasure in the suds, you immediately enter a state of constant, exhausting resistance against reality. To find a way out of this trap, we can look past philosophical defiance and turn to a modern, evidence-based psychotherapy framework, acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. The very first step of ACT requires you to drop the toxic positivity. You do not suppress your negative thoughts, and you do not try to paint over them. Instead, you practice radical acceptance of your misery. When you abandon the exhausting pursuit of trying to feel happy and simply accept the agonizing weight of the boulder in your hands, the mental burden begins to lighten. This animation illustrates what ACT calls self as content. Here, the heavy boulder icon fills the head. A person's identity becomes fused with their immediate negative thoughts. They think, "I am rolling this pointless rock. Therefore, I am pointless." But watch what happens when we shift to self as context. The individual steps back. They stop being the thoughts themselves and become the detached observer of those thoughts. Notice this space opening up. The internal dialogue changes. It goes from "I am pointless" to "I am experiencing thoughts about this pointless rock, but those thoughts are not me." This mental shift creates a gap between perception and phenomena. The negative emotion is no longer viewed as a threat to our identity. It is in this newly created space that we regain control over our experiences. We stop wasting energy fighting the reality of our chores and start deciding how we actually want to engage with them. Once you step into the safety of the observer gap, you realize you no longer have to choose between being happy or sad. You can focus your awareness on core values instead of the emotions. Rather than trying to feel joy, Sisyphus could hyper-focus his curiosity on the physical mechanics of his next step. He could study the rough texture of the rock, or channel his compassion into making sure he doesn't crush a bug on the path. By narrowing his focus down to an immediate, value-driven action, he reclaims ownership of an impossible situation. He stops fighting a losing battle against gravity and starts flowing with reality. We do the same thing with our modern tasks. When we align our daily chores with our values, like curiosity, presence, or care, instead of demanding they provide us with some grand, objective meaning, we can endure repetition without falling into despair. The ultimate psychological goal isn't to force a smile while paying your bills. It is a non-attachment to both happiness and unhappiness. Constantly asking yourself, "Am I happy?" is a trap that guarantees its own failure. Peace requires letting go of the question. Camus was right to tell us to accept our condition, but his famous conclusion needs an update for the modern mind. We must not imagine Sisyphus happy. We must imagine him entirely, unbotheredly present. By radically accepting our condition and embracing the observer state, self-awareness shifts from a source of anxiety to a foundation for poise.